Hi guys. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam, sir.
Mana link? Kejap ya.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Shall we continue last week? Dekat mana kita start Can someone let me know?
Uh, we stopped at group one's presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was up until the second paragraph.
Second paragraph.
Hmm.
Okay.
Is it the second paragraph or I think it's the up until the Judge Hercules?
All
Yeah,
right. Okay.
Judge
So this
Hercules.
one, right?
Yeah. So it's already like at the last paragraph already.
Last paragraph. All right. Now group one is for you to present the application. How do you apply? Group one members, okay? How do you apply this?
Uh, Okay, coincidentally, I'm in group one. Okay, so we applied this by saying that since Dworkin is very much in belief that if you want to impose a law or if a state wants to impose a law, there's no problem with it. However, it must be ensured that the law that is being imposed is also for the authority as well. So it shouldn't just be used as a form of abuse or only the lower classes has to adhere. It must be all social classes. If not, then the law beats the purpose or the objective of what the state wants to begin with.
Very good. Where is the mention about Judge Hercules?
Here on
Yeah.
the
Okay. Yeah. Right. So
uh,
how do you apply it?
okay, so we wrote that a Judge Hercules. I'm just going to read. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. So Judge Hercules, an ideal metaphor figure which will construct the theory that best fits and justifies the law as a whole, law as integrity. So in order to decide any particular case. Based on the situation given, what is the right answer that Judge Hercules would come out with by referring to the university's lecturers' freedom to make public statements? If Act 605 seems to be the perfect law in imposing certain requirements on the lecturers to get permission before making a statement, it has to be imposed on all lecturers and the authority as well, or simply just don't impose the law at all.
Very
Um,
good.
so
Okay.
I'm just going to continue. Is that okay, sir?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the concept introduced by Dworkin does not oppose government interference as long as it is enforced to every individual, regardless of political standing. Applying the Dworkin approach in relation to politics in democratic society, those in power should treat the political opposition consistently with how they would like to be treated when in opposition. It is unjust to impose a penalty to those who fail to obtain permission before making a statement just because some lecturers have different political standing that is probably in favor of the authority. So if the lecturers who support the government are facing the same treatment as the lecturer who support the opposition, would they be able to bear the same consequences? So in
Very.
conclusion, the
Mm.
state may interfere with the conduct of the individual contingent on the state ensuring that even those who has the authorities follows it as well. If not, the interference becomes unjustified and does not achieve its purpose, thus should be void.
Very good. Marvelous. Okay, good. Because for the rest of the group, when you talk about the application, yeah, here we are. The question or the answer is zeroing in the application part. What happened was, what you need to do is to talk about the given facts or the given problem. So they have mixed them together and discuss the theory or the approach of Dawkins. Now, as I already mentioned, you must put in the key element mentioned above. Here we have just checklist, and you have to talk about the situation that was given X 605 from the perspective of the judge. Yeah, from the perspective of the judge. Here, they mention about, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where do you mention about the judge? If there will be the judge Hercules looking at into this matter. Okay, a judge Hercules. Yeah, a judge Hercules. It's not the judge Hercules. A judge Hercules, meaning they are talking about anyone who is in the position of a judge Hercules position. He would see it in this nature, right? So very good, and congratulations, you have managed to mix, yeah, and properly apply the given problem into this issue. Well done. Okay, round of applause to everyone, in group one. Good. This is the full answer. Okay, good. Everyone else, for other groups, what you need to do is to be able to look at other groups' answers in order for you to gain some insight, yeah, on how they try to manipulate the idea into the problem that was given. Okay, and you can read this. I think this is just an extension of what they did just now. Okay, right. Thank you very much, Lukman. I appreciate it. Alhamdulillah, now you know already what needs to be done. Let's look at group two now. Group two, siapa? The group members, can you present?
Sir, I think you're mistaken. Group two have already presented
Pardon?
last.
Oh, they already presented.
Yeah, they were the first
Oh,
group to present.
right, right. I'm sorry. Won't be able to remember which group, or I've got so 4, 5, 6 group. So okay, you have to remind me. So
Okay.
group two, okay, done, right? Group three or group five. Okay, can we start with group five then? Yeah, thank you, Alisa. Group five. You are presenting hard, right?
Assalamualaikum, sir.
Waalaikumsalam. Siapa tu?
Is dia.
Is dia. Okay, right.
So, sorry. Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking, silap tak tanya about the rest of the group on the presentation of group 1 just now. Do you have any questions that you want to ask? I didn't ask you the question, whether you want to ask any questions towards group 1 or myself with respect to the answer that they have prepared. Because the work that you are doing right now for the tutorial is meant for everyone. It is not about me evaluating the group performance. The outcome of all the work that you are doing in this exercise is actually benefiting all of you. So if the presentation of group 1 just now is meant for everyone, so everyone should be able to give a feedback whether they have any questions or anything, of doubt that you want to clarify. Everyone, do you have any problem about group 1's presentation just now? Do you have any queries or any input or any comments? Are you okay?
I think the answer is clear enough,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, sure. You
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Right. Okay, good. The rest, macam mana? Can you put it into chat whether you are okay or not? Remember, this is the lesson whereby we cannot put in the majority just because the majority says I'm okay. I already know that area, or they are able to accept. No, it is not about that. It is about if you are the individual that doesn't understand, please, this is the session for us to clarify things. Otherwise, you are going to be left out. Because dia benda ni kalau kita tak buat follow up, then your mental is going to have a block, to block you from understanding. Juries is quite difficult for us to understand. For some, they might be okay, but some might not. So I'm looking at the some who is not able to grasp jurisprudence. Are you guys okay? 18 orang kat dalam ni. Never mind. Don't worry about your colleagues having some kind of label. Alah benda kecil macam tu pun tak faham ke? Don't worry about them. It is about you and your knowledge. Tak ada siapa? I think it's clear. Okay, good. Everyone, the rest. I need some feedback before we go to group 5. Okay, Helmi, no. Lagi? There are what? I think 15 answers that I need. I'm okay with Dawkin. Okay, Yasmin, good. Yasmin, you kata we good, meaning you are trying to represent other people ke? The rest, I need your input before you move on. No question. Mana yang lain? Are you there or you're looking at Netflix on the sideline? Okay, bolehlah ya. I cannot force everyone to put in. Okay. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, Alicia, good. When you read again and again, and then you will see when it comes to application, you are to invoke the jurist idea and apply at the same time. So we are going to evaluate your understanding of the principle of that jurist and how you apply. So that is the most important thing. Yeah, not about the juries. Obviously, the juries you must get it right. If you don't get it right on the juries, then it shows that you are not reading. Obviously, right? So it is your fault. But when it comes to application, it is my fault if I don't teach you how to apply, right? And this is the exercise that we are doing in order for you to, you know, be good in the application part, right? Okay, sorry for my wife, dia tengah masak. Okay, group 5. Right, I feel difficult to apply jurisdiction. Yes, yes, Alisa, is true. It is quite difficult, but once we got it, inshallah, there is not going to be a problem. Okay, that is why we are doing all this. So for all tutorials until the end of the semester, we'll be doing all this exercise just to get yourself familiarized with this. Okay, now group 5. Yes, can you please proceed?
Uh,
Yeah.
okay. So for group 5, we chose the jurist Chale Hart,
Mhm.
and he is mostly a positivist, but then he also has like sort of naturalist. He like recognizes natural law also.
Very, very good.
Okay, so his main like solution or system is the rule system, whereby he says that there are primary rules and secondary rules.
Mhm. Okay,
Yeah.
primary and secondary rules, you must bold it. Okay, guys, the
Oh,
rest of the group, in exam, you must
uh-huh.
be able. This bolding is not for me to clearly identify your line of thought. Yeah? So it is for you to present to people in saying that I know what it is, the core element of this particular person. So just like group 1 just now, Judge Hercules must be bold. You know, and then the idea behind Judge Hercules is something that you have to elaborate. Okay, good.
Okay. So basically, the primary rules is like the substantive laws lah. It can be like some kind equated to like as if substantive laws, and
Mm-hmm.
then secondary rules are like the parts of the legal system that make the law work.
Okay,
Ish.
good.
Macam tu lah.
Very good. Okay, guys. Still, I'm thinking of a way for the rest of the group. Yeah. If you are doing something, you want a structure. When it comes to juries, dia tak ada structure, right? So, in order for us to do structure, I think I need to put in like this. This is number 1. Okay, the juries. Second is the principal idea of the juries, right? And the third one is the explanation for the principal idea of that juries. This is where number 3 is the explanation, right? And then you will have to give the authority to back up that the I of number 3. Okay, you have to put in number 4, whereby it explain, or it is not explaining, it is proving some evidence. You have to have some evidence to say that this principle that come from this particular jurist is something that is real, can be identified in our practice. So here, can you continue?
Okay, so the primary rules is basically in the cakap tadi, and the secondary rules is the important one, especially with this problem, because the secondary rules is the one that determines, it has this rule of recognition,
Mm-hmm.
which determines whether or not the law should be recognized and that followed and applied apa semua.
Okay, so this example that you mentioned, rules of recognition is for secondary rules, yeah.
Yes.
So you have to also highlight, and you can italic them, or you can underline, up to you, yeah. Because you want to elaborate, because this is the core of the secondary rules. Everyone
Uh,
boleh nampak, yeah. Because
uh,
whenever you mention about primary rules, okay, the primary rules you explain, right? What is primary rules, and then the secondary rules you mention about what is secondary rules. Now, before that, before you go in depth of the secondary rules of recognition, what you need to do is to prove this is supposed to be number 5. Okay, number 4 is for you to prove the primary and secondary principle in example of law lah. Okay, so this
Oh,
is, yeah. Do you have that? Do you,
I
are you, ada kat
don't
bawah?
think
Tak ada.
so.
Di sini dah application dah kan?
Uh-uh.
You must be able to come up with a proof in terms of evidence. Where, example, example in real life. Where I already mentioned about penal code, right? Penal code
Yeah.
being the principal law, principal rules, and then we have the secondary rules in law of evidence, civil procedure or criminal procedure code, and then we have police act. We have so many laws to support the principal law. If you take federal constitution as the principal law, where you have rights given under article 5 to 11, then you must be able to support the principal law by showing there is laws that support the principal law, i.e. kalau kita ada right to move, right to move or right to property, then you have national land code to support. National land code becomes the secondary rules to support the primary rules. That must be inside your answer.
Sir, can it be the other way around?
Maksud you?
Maksudnya instead of the federal constitution being the primary, it becomes the secondary. Like if you want to say the provision in the national land code, how to recognize it is valid is by looking at the federal constitution. So
If you
then,
would, if you were to do that, then you are totally wrong.
oh, okay, sorry.
Why? Because principal laws, the primary rules are the one that is able to state what substance can, as what you mentioned just now. Substance.
Yeah.
What do you mean by substance? The rights of a person. That is just substance.
Okay.
How do you know whether that right is uphold? You have to have secondary rules that must be able to support the primary rules. Meaning the right to life. What do you mean by right to life? That is just a statement by a law, which is federal constitution, saying that you have the right to your life. But how do you know that it is translated into right to life? How do you know whether that right to life exists? By virtue of secondary rules. They have all the laws to support the right to life.
I see. One second. Okay.
Boleh faham ya? The rest, any problem? Okay, so you have to put in the example. I don't mind any example that you want to put in, as long as you are able to support it. Now, when it comes to hard, you jangan letak case law as your evidence. Here we are talking about rules. He was mentioning about rules in relation to legislative. So it is not proper for you to put in case law, okay, in these examples. So you must put in all the laws that you are able to, statute laws. Okay, sorry. Then continue with the example. So you put in rules of recognition, rules of change. Yeah. So here is another thing, and then rules of adjudication. Without these three, then the secondary rules cannot function, as what Had is saying. Right. So continue there.
Okay, so after finish explaining about the primary and secondary rules, Hart also distinguishes about the point of view of the person who is analyzing the law. He says that there is an external and internal point of view. So
Very
the
good.
so the external point of view is observer who is not like bound by that law, is not under that law, and then the
Sam,
internal point.
Sam. Sorry.
Sorry.
No, I have call coming in. My wife.
Oh,
Right.
sorry.
Okay. Internet. Sorry. Continue.
Okay. Internal point of view is by the person who is actually bound by that law. So then he analyzes it by two different points of view.
Okay. All right. Good. Good. Do you put in example if possible? Try to put example because when I
Example.
no, example when I said about internal external, rule of recognition, rule of change, it has to be translated into example. Why? Because you want to let yourself understand, or people to be able to understand you when you talk about heart. Okay, and you are able to link it. This is the most important thing when it comes to explanation about a principle or from juris. So whenever you state that principle or idea or theory coming from that person, you must be able to have example. Just now you mentioned about the primary and secondary. We must be able to prove the primary and secondary principle or rules into the law, the current law. Secondary principle. Okay. So the same goes with your anak-anak. Yeah, we have this rule of recognition change. A quick one. You don't have to elaborate because your core is to be able to apply the principle of heart into the problem, right? So,
Yeah.
but you want to impress other people, saying that you are able to know the example that can be provided to show what is internal or external point. So
Uh,
that is what lacking here. Cuma on that example lah, yeah.
uh, okay.
Legal example lah, legal example to be put. So here is uh, this
So
one is sorry,
uh,
yeah.
if we say for the example of internal external too, can we say like for example mm, okay tapi ni bukan law. Kalau macam US election, one is it's analyzed by the locals who are actually bound by the election, and then the other one is analyzed by foreigners who are also viewing the election. Macam tu. Boleh
Hmm.
cakap macam tu.
Boleh, boleh.
Okay.
Okay. Try to give as many example, but do not go overboard by giving those example. Kadang-kadang kan bila kita nak try to explain something, we tend to go overboard and try to explain in length. It is not. It's just a matter of macam you masak something. Not you are to cook, but not to cook it overdone. So bila you terlampau over sangat, and then it will take up your time in exam. If it's given 3 hours, you want to do something that is complete, everything is within that particular period of time. You don't want to be caught. They kata stop writing, time's up and things like that. But in COVID situation, you have the avenue of time for you to be able to do that. Okay, so kalau you kata bila you look back to your answer and then looking at it, you nampak ish, I need to give some example of rule of recognition, rule of change, rule of education. Just give one example each, without the need for you to be able to elaborate. Kalau you nak elaborate, nanti akan jadi panjang lagi kan? Because the core of our answer is the primary and secondary rules. We are doing all this example is to elaborate what is the primary and secondary. At the same time, we are also giving some kind of evidence to support the idea that was given. So anything that you put, basically, the rest of the group, anything that you put in as things that is important for the principle, you must be able to relate to the current law that we have. Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. Now you are done with that. Now you are going to apply, right? To provide
Ni
example, a country enacted law. So this is elaboration. Yeah. Uh, you must be able to come up with a certain specific act or regulation. Yeah. If you have an act, nampak tak? Act is the principle, the regulation or the rules to support the act. You know, you must be able to give that kind of that kind of explanation, legal example.
So
So
like
this,
more specific one lah.
yeah, it can be anything, nothing related to the problem. Okay, whenever you give your example, legal example, you don't have to be in line with the problem that is given. So the problem is just a problem. So whenever you apply nanti, you are applying the main principle, which is primary and secondary rules. Okay,
Okay, sir.
right, good. Soalan yang lain? While I'm giving the explanation, you are okay. You are expected to interject, to you know, to ask question. Okay, let's look at the application.
So Alisa has question
Sorry.
dekat chat.
Alisa, jangan kata sorry. You are here to interrupt. Jangan kata sorry, ya. I don't like that. Sorry. Ni rules of recognition and change tu macam mana? Macam mana? How do you know that rules of recognition and change?
Rules of recognition is basically the rules about how to kind the primary laws. Then rules of recognition is whether or not to recognize that law as valid. And then
Okay.
rules of change is like how to amend the law, for example.
Okay, I'm giving some an example that you are not to use in your final. Sebab bila I bagi example ni, ramai yang re-quote me into the exam, which is wrong. This is just an example for you to understand. Remember, Quran is asking us to pray, right? That is primary rules. Yeah. Secondary rules would be the hadith, where Rasulullah asked us show us how to pray. So showing us how to pray, that is rule of recognition. Okay, the secondary rules would be comprising of number one, okay, number two, they are together, okay, and number three. Right. So the first one, rule of recognition, meaning if you look at the secondary rules, then you should be able to understand that secondary rules of rule of recognition is recognizing the primary rules, because there is the hadith itself is recognizing the primary rules of Al-Quran. Boleh nampak, Alisa? Okay, so for example, federal constitution is the primary rules, right? The secondary rules must recognize the primary rules. How do you know that the secondary rules recognize the things that we see? Yeah, for example, we can use tort law lah. Tort law is, even though I said we must put in the what do you call it, in form of statute or rules. Kalau kita ambil law of tort, law of tort is trying to support the primary rules, federal constitution rights of a person, right to property. You know, how do you know right of property is being guarded? You look at law of tort under trespass to goods, then that trespass to good in essence is actually supporting the primary rules. Because all laws dalam Malaysia, tak kira mana-mana law yang you jumpa, they are going to support the primary rules, the federal constitution. They cannot, yang ni you belajar dalam federal constitution kan, any law that goes against the federal constitution will be void and nullified, and to the extent of that that contradiction. Okay, so dalam ni senang sikit lah kalau you nak pakai primary rules and secondary rules, because you can use the example of federal constitution as primary rules, and then you can choose any law that will support the primary rules. And then rule of change. Macam ni rule of change?
Rule of change is like, for example, how to amend a legislation and the parliamentary process and all that.
Contoh? I remember.
Hmm, tak ingat artikel tapi
tak,
dekat
tak
dalam
apa.
Federal Constitution ada apa? 4 cara nak amend the Federal Constitution. Itu example rule of change.
Yeah. Meaning the rule of change is there in order for it to be able to be utilized, in order for the law to be not fixed. The law have to adopt and change. Yeah. So the secondary rules can change whenever the primary rule change. Boleh nampak tak? Alisa, okay? Are you jadi my benchmark? Nampak ah? Okay, right. So, okay, let's move on to education ni memang okay lah. Yeah? That rules of how things are to be adjudicated, then that is the part and parcel of the secondary rules punya function. Right. Kalau yang dalam Islamic punya example tadi, kalau lah kata secondary rules is hadis, rule of education dalam hadis macam mana?
Hmm, rules of adjudication also include interpretation, right? So,
Interpretation, very good. Now we have people who wants to do solat, ada yang tangan kat tepi, ada yang tangan dekat pusat, ada yang tangan dekat dada, you know. That is interpretation. Ini adjudication meaning the interpretation of how you justify kenapa tangan pula kat tepi apa peha, tangan dekat apa perut, tangan dekat, you know, that kind of example. Boleh nampak guys?
nampak.
Okay, right. So let's move on to the application. Di sini bagus. You have done it very good. You are trying to give some kind of general application, right? So better give some kind of evidence. In bracket, right, to education. Which article, you know, which article. Kan? Nanti you bagilah which article. Then nanti this is how we practice, yeah. Later on, insyaAllah, you're going to be master of how to answer.
InsyaAllah.
Okay, let's do the application.
Okay. So in the application, we reiterate the fact that in the question, the law prohibits lecturers from making public statements about any issues in the country without the permission of the Vice Chancellor. And the Act also contains provisions which prohibit university lecturers from participating in politics. So yang ni kita mention pasal the Federal Constitution provides freedom of speech and association.
Okay, good. So Federal Constitution is the primary or secondary?
Itulah because when I wrote this, when we wrote this, we were still confused. Ingatkan boleh Federal Constitution tu boleh jadi secondary rule.
Oh, I see. Okay. So the Federal Constitution is the primary lah, which is in relation to the Act. Okay. Tapi kalau kita ambil Act ni, Federal Constitution as the primary, the Act becomes the secondary. Jadi kalau ada conflict between the Act and the Federal Constitution, then obviously the Act, which is the secondary, is not in line with the primary. That is how we evaluate. Kan? Kita evaluate something of an Act, whether it is in line with what HAT is saying. Any primary laws rules must be supported by secondary rules. Now, in this situation, kalau you kata Federal Constitution is the primary rules, okay, the primary, you can do this if you want to. Okay, better lah kan, primary rules, right? And then the Act you boleh letak kat sini secondary. Right. So di sini you are to evaluate the secondary rules because Federal Constitution primary rules is not the issue. The issue is the application of the secondary rules, whereby the law, the Act now we are talking about the Act and its application to the problem. Betul tak? Because the relationship of the Act ni yang jadi issue, and the implementation of the Act by the VC. Yeah, we are talking about the VC, the person, the administrator of the Act. okay, or the one that is managing the act, bukan managing the act, the one that is applying the act. Okay, so your concentration is more towards the secondary rules. So jadi you katakan ni these rights are not absolute, therefore contending that the act is contradictory to the fundamental rights may be fruitful. Macam mana tu? However the
Uh, Maksudnya meaning kalau macam nak bawa argument that the act contradicts the freedom of speech and freedom of association in the federal constitution, but then these rights are not absolute. So even if you bawa case to pergi court, it might not be in your favor.
Kalau you bawa to court, it might be not be in your favor. But do you think that in general terms that it is against the primary rules? Ataupun you ambil macam mana?
Kalau in general terms, kalau tengok just on the face of it, memang against lah. But then because kan freedom of speech and association tu pun ada banyak anak-anak dia.
Dia ada exception kan?
Yeah.
But it is not fundamental rights, it's the fundamental liberties. Fundamental rights is a right that is cannot be withdrawn, right? And then kalau liberties there, it can be at times being withdrawn away, taken away from you. You can use that argument, or you don't have to put in the federal constitution as primary rules. You put in the act as primary rules. Okay, kalau sini katalah you ambil, it's up to you lah ya. So primary, if you put this as your primary, which is you are not supposed to bring in the federal constitution, delete this one, right? If this is becoming the act becoming the primary rule, where is the secondary rules?
Well, the secondary rule, for the secondary rule is where in practice the law is not enforced equally. The one yang after that.
Maksudnya it contradicts with the rule of recognition, rule of change, rule of education. Meaning the act of the VC is not in line with these three.
Yes, especially the
Betul tak?
rules of recognition.
Especially rules of recognition. How can you say the act is the primary rules and the secondary rules are not supporting the primary rules? Right? In this, mana dia tadi? Ni. Kan? Ni buang dengan ni. So if you delete this, sorry to do that. If you delete this, the federal constitution is not in play. You want to put in the primary act as the act, as the primary laws or rules, then you are to discuss the secondary rules, meaning the act of the VC, whether the VC is doing something that is, in line with the what HAT is saying. So there is no secondary rules right here. Kalau you tengok dalam problem ni, because lecturers were taken action against, and then some people can do it, some people cannot do it.
Doesn't that become the practice lah then? So then
the practice, this is what HAT is saying. The secondary rules that you implement are not in line with the primary rules.
Yeah.
Kan? Jadi when the primary rules are not being supported properly by the secondary rules, the law, meaning the law formula dia macam mana dalam ni? HAT kata ya, HAT equals to law is good when there is primary plus secondary. Ya. Habis ke 12. Nampak that formula? Law is good when there is a combination of primary and secondary rules. So here, in order for you to investigate this particular problem of the VC taking action against some, whereas not against some others, you can say that the secondary rules is non-existent, because if secondary rules are to exist, there must be methods of how education, change, and recognition is being applied. So in this case, you can critically say that the secondary rules is non-existent. Remember, kalau primary rule sahaja exist, then not law. This is what Hart is saying. If secondary rules exist, then it is not going to not law. It must exist in combination of both. So they are hand in hand, husband and wife. If there is only one husband, uh, you know, the family cannot exist. There must be a combination of husband and wife. Clear? Clear tak? Tak faham? Siapa yang tak faham, please ask questions.
So, kalau nak faham that the secondary law is like a measuring stick against the primary law, tak boleh?
Boleh. But you must remember, sometimes you do have a situation whereby secondary rules sahaja yang ada, but the primary tak ada. So how can the secondary rules be enforced when there is no primary rules? Ni macam ni soalan ni dia tanya on is more towards the secondary rules rather than the primary. Okay, the primary is the act. So your direction is to attack on the non-existent of the secondary rules. However, if the question comes to the existence of secondary rules without the primary rules, now you attack on the primary rules because primary rules are not there. So therefore, there is no clear directive. Macam say for example, MCO. We have the Minister of Health and MKN and those people who are, they are doing things. Yeah, they are coming out with rules and regulation. One example that I can give is the police taking action against people for not wearing the mask at places. One example is the petrol station, right? So the definition is not right. If you have that primary rule saying that everyone must wear mask, it must be very detailed, whereby the secondary rules of implementation of that particular primary rules must be able to be clear. So kalau sekarang ni it is not clear to what extent, what do you mean by recognition? How do you recognize? This is recognize means it can be interpreted means orang yang baru masuk ke dalam kawasan stesen minyak dah kena pakai in their car. The moment dia pergi ke tempat pump tu dia kena pakai, or dia kena pakai bila dia pergi dekat kaunter dekat luar kena pakai, or bila dia masuk ke dalam premise nak beli tidbits. Which one? It has to be clear. If you want to implement something, you have to be detailed to the extent that everyone must think, must explore the situation. Otherwise, the primary rules are not going to be properly supported by the secondary rules. It can lead to chaos. That is what Hart is saying. In order for us to say a law is good law, you must be able to have that secondary law to support the primary laws. Otherwise, it makes things to be ridiculously not reasonable for us to apply. Okay, so you attack on the secondary rules here, saying that tak kisahlah how you want to argue it, it's up to you. This is the art of becoming a lawyer later on. So you have the avenue to present whatever things that you want to say. Okay, buat salah pun tak kisahlah because kita dalam mode of learning, right? Okay, so I think that's it for today. I want you to redo this on on your answer, group 5. Then we will be coming back. For the rest of the group yang tak present, it is not the time for you to relax because whatever we are doing is actually for the benefit of you, in your answer and your practice later on as a lawyer. Okay, so thank you so much for coming. So does it mean it must complement each other? Yes. Dia macam husband and wife. How can you say a family is a family? A family can only exist when there is a husband and wife. You can say it as a unit. Yeah, a unit comprises of A and B. So you cannot have a unit if it's alone A. You cannot have a unit if alone B. It must be together. So they are supporting to each other. Okay, macam contoh yang saya bagi tadi lah, solat. Dalam Quran kata solat, tapi kita tak tahu macam mana nak solat. Rasulullah in his hadis, dia akan bagi tahu, ni macam mana rokok, macam mana sujud, macam mana everything. Right? Okay, Ran. Thank you so much. I have got another class to prepare. So see you next week, and then please prepare your answer and look at your group 1 and group 2 as the benchmark. Okay. So thank you so much for coming. See you next week.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
So have a nice
Doktor
day.
saja, jangan doktor. Bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.
Bye. Thank you. Recording nanti I bagi ya. It's being recorded. Fifi dengan Ramiza dengan Yasmin, you have to go out. Okay, thank you. Ramiza, are you there? I remove